right, all right. Dusty. You can hear me okay, Dusty? Sure if we have there we go. Trying to get our video in here. It's been a while. Dusty, good day, man. How you doing? Can you hear me okay, Dusty? I think we got a microphone issue on your end. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I want to welcome everyone. This is this is actually Talking Commercial, where everything on this show, we talk commercial real estate. My co-host here is actually that way, Dusty Bates. And Dusty, I have you in here now. I got the microphone, man. How you doing? Nope, well, we had it. We had the microphone. I know we had a couple of glitches before last week, but I think we're finally working through those glitches. So today's show is going to be all about after your first deal. Once you've closed your first deal, what happens, right? Closing your first commercial deal within commercial real estate. And we're going to go over there and cover every bit of that of where to go next. What's your next move after you close your first deal? How do you keep, that balance all the way across the board of continuing to do more and more deals and not have a dip in ebb and flows? Dusty, we're here? We're good? Nope. You're muted. You're muted, sir. Let's try. There we go. Still can't hear you, Dusty. So we're going to let Dusty figure out this mic situation here. And today, if you're watching on any platforms, please give us a like, a thumbs up. Something, if you find value from this show, please give us a like and a thumbs up. It's going to help us tremendously wherever you're watching at on any platform. So we're trying to keep consistent with this thing and do it every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so everyone can join in. You got any questions? Anyone wants to chime in with comments or anything like that they have questions on what we're covering, feel free to drop a comment. We're going to answer every last question on this show today. And basically, last week, I believe, 2 weeks ago, we covered how to build your book of business within commercial real estate, how to get started from A to Z. And today we're just covering about what happens when you close your first commercial deal. So my co-host Dusty Bates is back. Hopefully the mic is working at this point. Dusty,
I hope so. Can you hear me?
There we go, my man.
Oh, much better.
Hey, good afternoon, man.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry about it. We're gonna work out our kinks. We're gonna get through it. Just to let you guys know that this is live, right? We're gonna have errors in this show. We're gonna have mishaps. So this is all about starting from ground zero today with once you close your first commercial deal, where to next? So Dusty, I'm gonna let you take it over. My question to you, Dusty, is me just getting into commercial real estate. How do I transition from my first deal into more deals, and do I keep those deals already in the pipeline, ready to move from my book of business that we covered?
Yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit about, so we talked last time about how to secure your first deal. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about how to take it from, I've got my first listing and my first buyer, or my first tenant, to escrow and closing. And then from there, where do I go? How do I expand on that? How do I take that from one listing to 3 listings, that kind of thing? Correct. So that's where we're going to start today, is a bit about that. Just to answer your question, once you close your first deal, you want to maintain the relationship with your clients and you want to keep that going. You don't want to just say, thank you, good job, we'll see you later. A home buyer may buy their house every 5 or 7 years, but a commercial investor probably is going to buy more often than that. So we want to maintain that relationship and not disappear. In addition to that, if you're leasing a space, when they go to renew, you need to be there to help them renew the lease, because you can get another commission after a couple of years helping them there.
Yeah, and I believe we have a question on here. Ron asks, do you have recordings of the previous episodes from Commercial Real Estate A to Z? Yes, Ron, we do. anywhere on Talk CRE. We're located on all social media platforms. Whatever platform you're watching on right now, it's also recording in there from the last couple of weeks. Actually, when we first started this show, so you can all go back and watch these episodes. They're recorded on all social media platforms live, but you can always rewatch. All right. I hope that answered your question. Thank you, Roger, for chiming in. Hit that like button for us.
Yeah. So let's dive in a little bit. I wanted to first make sure we went over this again. If you're a residential agent who does residential only, you don't do any commercial. This is from, I think this was like 5 years ago, but the data tracks. It's higher for both sides. Your median income about 40,000 if you only did residential. This is across the U.S. If you close, this is a realtor number. This isn't just commercial brokers are not usually realtors.
Right.
But in the realtor side, one of the categories is a realtor who closes at least one commercial transaction. That means they do mostly residential, and they close one commercial transaction or more. The income is more than double what it would be if you just close residential only. So it's in your best interest to learn how to do commercial. We have different ways to do that.
As a residential agent.
As a residential agent, yeah. So if you want to transition over, you should. Here's just a quick stat about that. There's a lot less commercial agents than there are residential. So there's also less competition. It's also a smaller playing field, so you don't want to burn any bridges, of course, in commercial.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same that's true for residential too. You don't want to burn any bridges, period. It's a small world out there.
It's a general good rule of thumb, but if you're looking at 3,000 people that you come into contact with, whereas I know every commercial broker in my MSA, I've spoken to all of them. And just a real quick point, if you're doing residential, you can make a bunch of money if you just refer out. So here's just a standard transaction, $1 million, 30,000 commission. If you get a referral fee for a quick call, that would equate to like $30,000 an hour. So you could learn it on your own. But if you've got commercial transactions that you can help out with, I would jump in there and refer it out.
So if I have a commercial deal, I'm referring them to Dusty. Dusty, I can get, if it's a $1 million deal, which I'm sure most of these commercial deals in our area in California, way over 1 million. Houses are over 1 million. So that's good. That's a good passive income right there.
Yeah, because I mean, we come across that all the time where it's like, oh, I've got, hey, you just sold my house. I've got this 20-unit apartment building that I want to sell. Can you sell it for me? And you see the dollar sign there as a residential agent, like, oh yeah, I can figure that out. A lot of times that's a lot of trouble, headache. Either you need to learn it right now and get ahead of that, or you should probably refer it out and then forego all of that headache and use that money to learn it as you're going.
Okay. Perfect.
Let's see. Let's blow past this. We're not really going to talk about different ways to transact commercial. I want to talk more about how to take it from escrow to close. So we talked about some of this last time.
Yeah.
Leasing is very important.
And then Dusty, for people that are just now joining or watching this for the first time, how many years of commercial real estate have you done? I mean, have you been in the business for?
13, 14
years. Okay, 14 years experience in commercial real estate. And you jumped straight into commercial real estate over the residential side, correct?
I went from college to helping people flip multifamily properties and some smaller rentals. And then I got my license and I immediately went into, my first deal was 33 houses to a hedge fund. And then I went in from there and I just kept doing multifamily and kind of scaling from there.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't stand the residential side and someone doesn't like the crown molding or the red door or something like that. It's like,
right. That's not of a concern when you're in commercial real estate. Obviously, it's less emotional. It's more numbers driven.
A lot more ego oftentimes. So there's different problems, for both sides. But I prefer the commercial, certainly.
Okay.
Here was just an example of what I usually do. We help people trade from multifamily or rental portfolios into net lease properties like that. Here's how the commission broke down as an example. what you could do. Because as a residential agent, a lot of times people who have a sphere of influence have people in their phone that own rental properties, and that's a good way to transition over.
Yeah. Now I have a client right now that owns a couple apartment buildings,
Mhm.
and I had a discussion with him actually this past weekend about hey, have you ever thought about triple net leases and transitioning from the apartment building investing to triple net leases?
Right.
And he keeps hearing about it, but he has no idea the benefits of transitioning from multifamily into triple net leases. So that's one I'm going to refer to you, Dusty, to kind of give like an overview of, hey, you have X amount of properties because the guy owns like 4 different apartment buildings, like 22 units and more. So that's going to be one I'm going to refer out to you as well, and hopefully you can help him transition. And once again, that's a good benefit for anyone that's in residential. If you don't know the space of uh, commercial real estate, get with a great commercial real estate agent or realtor and team up. Get those referrals, set up a call with them, get those referrals, and create that business. That business that you probably can't touch, but you can get a referral from it. Passive income. It's a great way to make additional income. Yeah.
There's a good site there too. That's where I had the same questions every single time from people who moved from multifamily to net lease properties. We put them. It's like a 15-minute read. The retiredinvestorbook.com
Okay.
would be a good place to start too.
The retiredinvestorbook.com.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
very quick read. It's this. We get the same questions every time, so it should get you a real good head start at learning net lease properties and fast food specifically type properties. But I kind of put here A to Z what you want to do with a client. Okay, if you're going to guide a property in from whether it's a listing or a buyer or a tenant into close, you're going to start at the top, go to the bottom. We're going to start by vetting the client. You don't want to take every single client that comes your way. A lot of beginning agents will do that. They'll take any which client, hey, I want to buy a $2 million property. Okay,
Right.
let's go. No, you need to sit them down, find out how well qualified are they? Are they realistic? Do they need a loan? Have they been pre-qualified? Where are the funds? Are the funds in the United States? Are they elsewhere? Are they liquid? There's a lot of questions that go into that before you can find out if the client is real as a buyer or as a listing too. A lot of times, as you know, people who want to list their properties want to way overprice it.
Right.
How are we going to navigate that? Right.
And Dusty, this has been a huge question that not only me, but a lot of other real estate agents, residential agents have asked is how do you vet that client? I think even me at one point, I used to come to you and say, hey, Dusty, I want to buy a commercial space, right? That's not the right approach, obviously. What's the right way to approach a commercial agent about purchasing or find out more about a commercial asset? What's the best way?
What? Say again?
What's the best way to approach a commercial agent on a investing in commercial real estate? Like if I see a certain asset online, what's the best way to approach and call that commercial agent? Because that's always been a question, like to approach them the right way.
As far as an agent goes, you're going to want to know, as an investor, you want to know what you would like to see. You want to be ideally realistic, but you want to be flexible because they're going to start to vet you a bit like that. They're going to say, okay, what kind of cap rate are you looking for? What return? And if you say, I want a 15% return, they're going to have an idea that you don't really know what you want.
Right.
If you're very general, you need to be more specific. That's one of the vetting things that you're going to do is you're going to vet them and really narrow down what specifically they want. And they say, I want a 10% return. Well, what does that mean? Is that a cap rate? Okay. If it's a cap rate, that's very unrealistic. We're going to have to be very risky with what we're doing.
Okay.
Not impossible, but as we get higher on the cap rate return, it's going to be more risky, right? So there's going to be an appetite for risk there too. And if those are not in line with reality with the market, then it may be you can help them realign to what may be more market standard, or you might want to pass. It may not be a good fit, right? If they need a 10% cap rate return, and they don't want to do any work or take any risk on, there's not really a lot you can do for them.
So are you passing on? Are you passing on that client, or are you passing that client on to someone else, or are you like, hey, sorry, I can't help you, or how are you handling that?
A lot of times I'll say, here's where the market's at. I'll bring them some examples, and they'll say, you know what, I don't really like that. And I use the second one on here as the rule of three. I say, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring you 3 properties. I want to know what you don't like about them. I don't, and if you like them, we'll offer on them. But I want to know what you don't like about them, because that's going to give me a good idea of how realistic you are. I'm not going to tell them this, but how realistic they are with the market, what they know, what they don't know, and give me a better idea of how to offer them another 3 on the next round. So if they are unrealistic, I say, look, this is where the market's at for the most part. And there's a spectrum. We're going to take more risk as we get a higher return, right? So we're going to get more return for more risk. We're going to get a lower return for less risk, right? So where on this spectrum do you want to be? Because the market for these types of properties, depending on where I want to put them, is this type of risk, right? And they say, well, I need 10% return. Say, okay, well, here's the type of risk we can expect for that kind of return, and it's not very common, and I can give them that whole spiel. And then they may say, sure, I'm willing to take that on. Right. Okay. Or they'll say, no, I don't want that. I just need a 10% return. I said, well, you know what? I don't have access to that kind of inventory right now. If I did, I'd buy it. Right.
Right.
But what I can do, I can keep you on my list. If anything like that pops up, I'll make sure to send it to you. But I don't think there's a good fit here right now for me, just because I just don't have access to that right now.
So you're adding them to your book of business basically as a buyer, potential buyer, as long as you're vetting them a little bit further. Obviously,
I do put an indicator on my tags. There's tags. Yeah. Okay. Hey, here, they weren't quite realistic.
Right.
And chances are a 10%, this massively crazy, awesome deal comes along, I'm already going to have someone in mind for it. Right. Yeah. So they're probably never going to see anything, but that's a good way to get out of the conversation without burning any bridges. Right. Or pissing anyone off. So, because you don't need to do that regardless.
Yeah. So that's the key. And then if let's say Dusty is the listing agent on a commercial property, I get a lot of agents, residential agents saying, hey, I'm going to call this listing agent because I have a client that wants to buy, and they want to represent their client. So it's not really that way of approaching it where I'm a buyer's agent and you're the listing agent. It doesn't really work that way in the commercial space, correct?
Well, you can. Okay, there's a couple different ways. You, as a commercial broker, you have access to inventory that's not necessarily on the market.
Correct.
I represent buyers in the fast food realm a whole lot, so I know a lot of the brokers who represent a lot of the fast food, franchisees across the U.S. So there's probably, like I told you last time, a dozen or so people that I'll call when I have a need for fast food, and they're going to give me a list of their upcoming inventory because we've done plenty of business. They know me. They know I do what I say I'm going to do. And when I say I have a client, I actually have a client. So that could be the first big mistake that you might make trying to bring a buyer to the table, is not having vetted them properly, not knowing how realistic they are.
Okay.
Right. So I just spoke to someone today who wants to buy a $2 million multifamily in Northern California. He's got about $600,000 in cash, and he has not approached a lender yet. First thing that we're going to do is approach lenders, make sure he's fully vetted there, fully qualified.
Right.
He seems to be realistic with some other things, but I'm not going to talk to anyone about my buyer until I bring him these 3 properties on the rule of 3, and I see that he's realistic. Right. If he tells me he wants to offer on it right now, I know he's realistic, and we can pursue it. And then sometimes they lose that first deal. That's actually kind of helpful for me because they didn't jump on it in time. And so he may lose one of those first couple deals because he didn't buy it in time, or he didn't jump in time, or he was kind of thinking things through over a couple days, and then
it's gone now. analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Right.
So that'll jump them. That's another benefit of that, is that'll kind of jolt them out of that.
Okay.
Which is I really like that, because I don't spend a lot of time on it. I find 3 properties that fit what they say here they are, tell me what you don't like, and then we continue working together, or we don't. And there's a lot of things that happen during that that kind of shake them loose.
Gotcha.
But that's what I would do. If at the client do the rule of 3. Did I have these on here? I think I might have had that on just as an example. Yeah, here we go.
Rule of 3. Okay.
There's 3 rules to the rule of 3. You don't give any buyer more than 3 properties at a time, because you can you call it snowblind, right? So here's a property, and well, I don't like it, and you never really define why. Well, here's another property, and then like 10 properties down the line, they're like, what about property number 4? And everyone's like, well, was that this one or that one, or is that still available? And it's just, you make no progress. So tell the client, we're going to do 3 properties at a time. And then you need to disqualify those. Okay. We're not going to move on until you disqualify those, or we offer on them.
So you got to disqualify those 3. Otherwise, we don't move on. Yeah.
Well, and we can do 1 at a time, right? So there's 3 total. And then maybe property number 1 gets DQ'd, and we're looking at 2 and 3. And in the meantime, I replace number 1 with a brand new one, right? Okay. So we still have 3 at a time, but we're not moving on past 3 at any given time. Same thing with offers. If you're beginning clients, right? So if you have more than 3 active real clients, you're going to start getting pretty busy in the commercial field. And you can start to bring on people to help you. If you're just starting out, you probably shouldn't have more than 3, because you're going to get too busy to monitor all these different moving parts with them. Okay, because there are probably going to be a lot of buyers and leasing opportunity when you first get started.
Yeah, because I would think that more leads the better. But you're saying in this case, 3 is your cap. Until you take care of those 3, then you move on to the next, right? It's kind of like the situation: you knock off 1 and you bring a new one in.
Yeah. When I say active clients, I mean, I've got my 3 active listings that I just put up. Okay. So if I move past 3 and I'm at 4 and 5 and 6 listings, why are they not moving?
Right.
Okay, why aren't they selling? I'm not listing them properly. There's something disconnected. Missing. Whereas, I should have about 3 at a time, and they should be moving. If they're not moving, I've done something wrong and we need to adjust.
Okay.
Right. Same thing with buyers. If we're not offering on properties and I'm not moving them into the property as a buyer in escrow, we're doing something wrong.
Right. And then with those buyers, it's not like, hey, I want to go see the inside of this property here. Right. It's not that type of showing.
Yeah. If we jump back over here, here's kind of phase from end to close. Around contract and due diligence is when you're going to see the property for the most part. If it's an investment property, if it's an owner user, you can go see it right away.
Okay.
Before you offer on it, because that's going to give you an idea what you need to do to make it yours, right? So if it's an office building and you need to have certain amount of executive offices and bullpen and all this, you need to see the space to get an idea of what you need to do. Right. But for the most part, for investment properties, I've had people who buy these fast food places. They never see them, and that's their choice. But they may buy just based on the income stream that they're purchasing and the quality of that income stream.
Okay.
So a lot of times, once we're in LOI's letter of intent, and then we negotiate back and forth on that. We agree on that. Then it goes to contract phase, and that's back and forth too, usually among the attorneys. And at that point, they're probably at a point where they can let you into the property. But oftentimes there's tenants and stuff that don't need to be bothered left and right and all the time.
Yeah, that would be my main concern, is bothering the tenants and causing a little uncertainty if they're going to stay or not, right? Because they see a new owner coming, or potential new owner coming in, makes people kind of nervous.
I have a space in Fresno area where it includes a convenience store. Okay. And we have to be very careful about who we tell about the property, because if they were to go to the store, they're going to scare the employees. right? Because he owns the store as well. It's not just the
Yeah.
building.
Okay.
So, there's you need to be more cautious. That can be another thing if you're just getting started. That'll be a red flag if you're like, hey, can we go see the property? And they're like, you haven't even reviewed the profit and loss yet. Like, why
Right.
would you want to see?
Look at the P&Ls first to make sure it's a viable asset, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so during these phases, you have letter of intent. You're going to go back and forth. You're going to get in contract. Once you're in contract, and usually a little bit before, you'll have due diligence sent over. These are leases, prelim, insurance certificates, all this kind of stuff that you'll need eventually. And you need to verify profit and loss statements. Sometimes you'll get as far as different bank statements if there's some discrepancies that you notice. But they're going to certify that all of this is true, and that'll be all free to you. And then you'll do stuff like appraisal, phase one, that kind of thing that might cost some money. A PCA is a property condition assessment. It's your what is it called in residential when they have an inspection?
Home inspection.
It's just a home inspection. Yes, it's basically a home inspection. For commercial would be a PCA.
Home inspection, yeah. And I mean, and it's different inspections you're going to have than just your general home inspection. And I'm sure it's the same way in commercial. I'm sure you have a general inspection of the building or whatever the asset is, and then you can have a more in-depth roofer, plumber, electrician, boiler guy. Well, I guess the same plumber, but yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. But I'm sure yours is more costly. Like, how much is a typical home inspection for you? I mean,
PCA. The last one we did was that $750? It was in Florida when I did.
How many is it? Was it a commercial build, like a apartment building?
It was a medical building. It had a dental office in it.
Okay, and it was $750.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah, that was in Florida. So it's different wherever you go. The timing's different. A lot of times it can be done within 10 days. Someone will go out there and they'll take pictures of everything. They'll give you a schedule. Like, here's stuff that has to be done immediately, right? Your ADA compliant stuff. Here's some stuff that's delayed. Here's some stuff that'll be a problem in 5 years.
Okay.
And they'll give you a rough estimate. I guess they do that on home inspections too, but a rough estimate of what all that will cost.
Right. And how long they feel like the lifespan it is on, like, let's say the roof, for instance. Mm-hmm. They'll give you that same breakdown there. And that's what I think you would include in your capital expenditures or up front if you want to retrade or trade down, right?
You can, there's another type of that inspection where it'll have a schedule of capital expenses, right? Okay. So they will create a whole schedule for you from here until 20 years from now on what should be done now, what should be done in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And you can create a capital expense budget, right? So you're going to save a certain amount every year because in year 5 you have to replace the roof.
Correct.
Likely. So you can start to plug that into your pro forma or your future facing numbers to identify, like what that'll look like. These are conversations you have with the client. They may want to do that. Some won't. Some
right.
won't care.
Well, and then I think the cost segregation will come in play after that, right? Is that some of what you're doing that for?
Yeah, that's another level to it. Cost segregation. So depreciation is we're basically pretending that the whole value, the improved value of the building is going to disintegrate into nothing. It's going to be worth nothing
over years.
In 39 years for commercial. How many years for multifamily? Pop quiz.
How many for multifamily?
How many years is the depreciation schedule for multifamily?
I want to say 10.
27 and a half.
Damn, I was way off.
Now
I'm a little rusty today.
Yeah, but we're basically pretending the improved value is going to disappear into nothing after 27 and a half, 28 and a half, 39 years. And you can write that off every year.
That's for right now, right? That can change depending on.
So we'll go. So
I don't want to get too far and deep into this.
Do you want to go into straight line depreciation versus cost segregation? And
let's say that for another episode. Let's say that for our next episode. I'll let you get through this. I just have a ton of things going through my mind on this stuff.
All of that basically breaks down to we get to write some stuff off every year.
Right.
If we know the roof has to be replaced in year 5, we can have it on its own write-off schedule, where in year 5, we can pull the rest of that remaining value off and put another schedule in place for this new roof that's going to last, 20 years or so. And now it's pushed out 20 years for this new roof. So there's basically different write-offs you can do tax-wise.
Okay.
We're doing our due diligence that's free. We're doing our due diligence that costs money. We're guiding our client in to a close. Okay, this is how you're closing a deal. You're in contract. You've got free stuff to do. You got stuff that costs money. In writing, you're going to ask the client what they want to do that costs money. Right? Do you need an appraisal? It costs money. This and that. Do you want to do a phase 1? Okay. As that's going on, I have a situation right now where we've got a loan in place. You need to coordinate with escrow, the loan officer, everyone about different inspections, but also your due diligence, right? So communication, I like to over communicate about when time frames are. So when I first enter escrow, for example, I have a contact sheet and a timeline sheet. Okay. I like to prepare that. I like to be the one that prepares that. Escrow will do that for you. But if I prepare it, then everyone by default agrees to it, which means I get my timelines. So it could be that we signed it on like a Friday, and then maybe my due diligence ends on technically a Sunday.
And you could that can end on a Sunday? Oh, I guess it could, yeah.
It depends on if the word is calendar days or business days.
Right.
Right. A lot of times it's not specified, just as days.
Right.
So, I like to make my own time frame so I can pick those dates and everyone can agree to it. But you need to coordinate with everyone toward close. We have a due diligence that's up in 2 weeks. So I have a full week next week, and then the Monday following, due diligence is up, as is my financing contingency. Okay. So next week, at some point, I need to know if I need to extend that. And I don't want to surprise the listing agent with that. Right. They need to know where we're at with everything. We should have done all of our inspections by now, which we have. And we need a time frame from the lender on when that's going to come up. Is it going to be an issue in a week and a half that we're going to need some more time before that's fully approved? And so as you're guiding things into a close, you need to have that in mind. You need to have a mindset a couple weeks in advance of what's going to come due and make sure everyone's on the same page. And not just assume that everyone knows, okay, yeah, everything's up now and everything's fine.
Right.
Because that's a good way to get in trouble. Sorry. And then the other thing I would say is closing an escrow. I don't know how it works in residential. About a week out from closing, maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks sometimes, I'm talking to the escrow agent about an estimated close date, making sure I coordinate with the listing agent or the buyer's agent on when that close date is and when is comfortable. We're going to make sure we have all the closing packages out a couple days prior. We're working on wiring money in.
Yep.
Right. I'm being proactive about this. I'm not just assuming that the buyer is going to wire the money in. I'm making sure the buyer's agent has that wiring instructions and everyone's on that same email list, and just kind of guiding everything in. I'm babysit everybody. I'm a professional babysitter.
You're speaking from the side of being a listing broker, correct?
Either way, yeah. Okay. Whether you're listing or buying, there's a lot more to sign on the listing side.
Okay.
If you're selling something, if you're buying something, there's a lot less to sign. It's almost scary sometimes. People are like, I don't have to have no one's gonna. I don't need a notary for this. Like, you just sign this and send it off, and I send in my $2 million and we close. And yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we need a notary for almost anything and everything with residential. So that's crazy. That is scary.
On the commercial side, it's buyer beware. So if you're 5 units or more multifamily or commercial, it's very make sure everything's in writing and over communicate. So no one gets in, because if you get in a scrap with someone, everyone loses.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. But that's how you kind of guided in the closing. I think I had a couple more slides on this that we can. Yeah, we talked about the rule of 3. So these are kind of the 3 that we would say: finding clients, negotiating the deal, and then closing that deal. We went over most of this stuff, I think.
Right. And then and basically what I'm looking at for, I mean, most of our people on here is after we're closing this deal, we're closing out, we're the week out from closing. How are you handling that as far as if you're representing the buyer? Like, are you getting, like, for us in residential, we're getting stuff for the home, like gifts and all that stuff. How are you handling that for your buyer? Are you getting them gifts, or are you asking him about, some of his other properties that he's looking to possibly sell? Like, how are you handling that buyer?
Yeah, let me pull this. I didn't have this loaded up. I've got some slides for us to look there. I do a gift, depending. I
Okay.
just gave a client he likes golf, so it was a El Macero out here. He loves that place. He's never had a chance to golf there, so I gave him a 4-pack gift to take some guys out there and go golfing and brag about how he just closed his warehouse.
How much was that deal, if you don't mind me asking?
The warehouse was about was at 3.6.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna go out there and brag, right?
3.6, and I've gotten another client from him as well. That's where I get a lot of my clients from word of mouth and networking.
Yeah. Let's go.
Let's see, client retention. Where's my client retention slide? Because what you'll do is you don't want, there's no former clients. They are inactive clients.
They're inactive. That's how you market them? Inactive?
They're inactive. They're not buying right now. They're not your former clients. You don't just, there we go. You don't just disappear. Once you're done, you're going to put them on a drip campaign. You're going to check back in with them every quarter, maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah. So like residential, mainly I want to find out, like, am I putting their property, like a property valuation every, 6 months, like whether the property goes up in value or goes down in value? I don't think that's the case, but am I?
Yeah, right. So it's called a buy-sell analysis or
Okay.
a release analysis, depending on the situation. So you could look at their property once a year is what you're going to want.
Okay.
And you're just going to offer to do an analysis of their equity position once a year. And you're going to look at their internal rate of return for their property. And you're going to make some recommendations. Maybe they should adjust their rents a bit. Maybe say there's some things they can do to streamline their expenses.
Okay.
But after about 5 to 7 years, that's going to drop off significantly. And they're going to possibly want to trade out into something else. That internal return. If you could sell it today, what would your annual return, what you would get with cash flow over the course of the time you owned it, what would your return be?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After about 5 years, that tends to drop off, which ties back into depreciation, because they tend to have written off a lot of that stuff after 5 to 7 years. And then it makes sense to trade up, right? So I bought something for $3 million. I need to start trading up to $5 million now to keep that tax benefit and all the other returns flowing.
And I guess I misspoke about once you do the inspection of the property, you trade down. It's just called a retrade, right? From your initial offer.
Yeah, retrading. If you're in escrow.
Yeah, if we're in escrow, we do our inspection. We do our due diligence free, and then we pay for our the other due diligence is cost. Then we come back to the table to negotiate, and maybe we retrade at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you're taking the word of the agent and the seller because you haven't inspected it or a whole lot of stuff yet, right? So here's your brochure or your offering memorandum. Here's some profit and loss numbers. We're telling you here's the return based on today, and here's the picture of the property financially, and I make you an offer based on that being true. Okay, and some buyers have a problem with that, and I have to explain to them, like, look, we're assuming what they're saying is true, and if it's not true, guess what? We get to go back to the negotiating table and take a bite out of that, right? And it's very fair to do that. So some agents will hide all the nasty stuff on their brochures, and then that happens, right? They'll get uncovered, and they have to take a big hit in the price point.
Yeah, well, I think you taught me that, like, don't look at the cute stuff in the beginning. Go all the way back to the P&Ls and all that stuff. all the fluff is in the beginning of that OPM.
Offering memorandum.
I mean OM.
Yeah, and they're not hiding it. Good agents won't hide it. They'll just be part of it. Like, here's the upside. Here's a problem that you could fix.
Yep.
Not here's a problem in a throwaway sentence that is 4 pages deep in the OM. Right. That's not what you want. You want to put it up front. Like, here's a benefit, and here's how you could do things in the future, and here's how much more money you can make by fixing this problem. But yeah, that's a good point, because you don't see anything until later on in the contract days.
Right. So now you get the former client, inactive client. So my client's closed on their property. I'm following up with them after 5 years. That's going to, the constant updating of the property is going to kind of fall off after 5 years. Now, how am I transitioning to get that client to purchase more or possibly sell to trade up?
Well, learn about depreciation.
Okay.
And how that works. So they're going to have either done cost segregation study, which front loads a lot of that right off to the first 15 years or less. And as you know, right now it's in the first year or two. So it makes sense after like 5 years, 4 years to start trading out. But you essentially want to buy up. So I've claimed a on paper tax loss of the improved value of my property, $2 million.
Right.
I need to go buy $4 million now, so I can write all that off as a loss. Right. So on paper, on tax paper, I'm losing money, whereas really I'm making plenty of money. I'm just using it as a loss on paper. So
okay. So this is where people get upset because other people don't pay their taxes, or they don't think they're paying their taxes, or they don't. This is the loophole.
This is how you do it. You buy investment property and you write it off, and then you buy up. You keep buying up, and then you exchange by doing that, and you don't have to pay taxes. And then you pass away, and you pass that on to your heirs in the form of complicated LLCs and entities, so you don't have to pay certain taxes.
We are not tax specialists.
Not a tax specialist. I just
talk to your CPA on any of this stuff. Disclaimer. So all right, so we're at the closing gifts, we're closing file, wrap up, congratulations call. Those are the next steps. What's the next steps for them? What to do now, answer questions. So take me on the side of the listing side. I get the buyer. I mean, your buyers just closed. What about the listing agent that just closed on this deal?
If we've listed it and sold, or the listing agent themselves, how do I connect with them?
Yeah, no. Well, that's a good point too, because you probably want to connect with them and keep a good rapport. But I'm saying, as far as your client that you just sold their property, their asset on, what are you doing next once you close?
We have already been working on their exchange, probably almost always. Very rarely do they want to just cash out and pay Uncle Sam 30-40% or plus. So we're in the process of doing that exchange. So for a listing, I'm right in the middle of things. Once we close their replacement property, we're in the final stages usually of finding their replacement.
So you're already found and identified another asset for them to trade up to before you close on theirs. Got it. So all right. So you're starting that process right as you're listing their property. You're already in 1031 mode at that point, correct?
Yeah. So when we do, I should have used the apartment building that I had as an example. But when we're doing this, we're listing these. We listed these in 2 batches, 3 at once, and then 2 in the other batch. And then we found 1 replacement. As the deposit is non-refundable, we're getting very serious about offering and getting into contract on a replacement. Okay. So we haven't closed anything, but we're selling something. Deposit's non-refundable, very close to be. We're going into contract right now on a replacement. So we've been looking, going to contract. As closing approaches, we're likely entering the end of our due diligence period on our replacement. Okay.
Gotcha.
So ideally, the replacement's due diligence ends after our closing date for the relinquished property.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything weird happens last minute, my client gets their deposit from their property for wasting their time, but then we're not stuck with this replacement property and no money.
Right.
We can actually get out of it. So a lot of times what happens is everything closes within the same week or two.
Concur.
Right?
Okay.
So we sell these first 3 properties, we buy the Burger King. We sell the second 2 properties, we buy the Dollar General. Within a couple weeks of each other, but we're timing it so that we already know what we want before the first property closes.
And with that deposit that's non-refundable, is that every commercial deal? Once you get to a certain point, that deposit is non-refundable?
That's an interesting question. As you go farther east, we're in California here.
Correct.
You're listening.
Yeah.
In California and farther west, there is no pay to play kind of non-refundable immediately money.
Right.
Oftentimes that doesn't exist. As you go, Texas and farther east, there's a couple $1,000 that you need to at least put in that's completely non-refundable.
Got it.
Day one, right? So I have an offer, $5,000 non-refundable, and then the deposit is $30,000. And that buys me my due diligence. And at the end of my 30 days or 20 days, that goes non-refundable. But that first 5,000 is like, it's gone, right? So that's the owner's now. That's what you have to pay in to take a look at the property and tie up his time.
Right.
But back here in California, that's uncommon. Still, it could change.
Gotta love California.
I like that model though. That really gets rid of a lot of looky-loos. Someone who wants to tie your property up for 30 days.
Yeah, I like that too.
They have to come in with $5,000, $3,000.
Non-refundable. Yeah.
Completely non-refundable. Yeah.
Beautiful. So this was a ton of information for us to cover. I know we're past our 45-minute mark here. We don't have any more questions in the comments here. This is good. This is good for me to know, like, what's the next step for me to take once we close our first deal. And this is good. This is a good follow-up for both buyer and listing agent to know which direction to go. Obviously, the listing agent is already involved with the next move. That point, the buyer's agent is not really in that position, right? They have to keep.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same position though. If I'm exchanging, right? So I'm eventually going to be a buyer for both sides,
right?
Whether I was just a buyer or whether I'm exchanging into a new property, I'm still going to have another owner with a new property that I need to analyze every year or so. I need to approach them and say, hey, it's our annual checkup essentially, right? You meet with your financial advisor once a year. You meet with me once a year to look at the health of your properties. And sometimes I'm going to recommend maybe you approach a lender about getting some new financing because the interest rates are lower. Maybe we're going to do something with your expenses. Maybe it's time to sell. That's why how you stay in front of them and get those listings whenever it's time.
Yeah, I mean that's. I wish I had known about this a long time ago.
Here's a good question. Here you go.
Check this out. For listing agent, did the seller should have appraisal done before listed? So basically, the question is, she's asking if you should have an appraisal done before you list the property to kind of like approach the seller with. Is that something that's common?
I have a situation in San Diego with, as you know, one of the people we're mentoring. And the situation there is that the owner has a unique property that isn't easily able to find comps. So when I approach someone, I'm saying, hey, I wasn't able to find comps. Do you have some? So I can show my buyer.
Right.
And they don't. Right. And so my second question, they actually have an in-house appraisal company. Why didn't you get it appraised? You wouldn't have a problem with me or another buyer if you had it appraised. So it's kind of both ways. It is good to have an appraiser take a look at the property, especially if there's not a lot of comps for that property. Okay. You should also have the title work done or a prelim put together, so you know all the exceptions that are in there. Maybe there's something weird that pops up.
And let me ask you this, Dusty: who's paying for it? Who's putting that upfront cost for all this stuff? Is it the
So
seller?
that's why on the appraisal side, it's probably only best if you need an appraisal, right? In this situation, no one's really going to come after it because there's not a lot of comps. There's nothing to comp it out. So it makes sense to have an appraisal done. That's going to cost you $5,000+ in the commercial field. So there's kind of a cost benefit analysis you have to do there. Say, well, is it worth $5,000 to just have this ready to go?
Right.
If someone comes to the table? And that depends on how weird and difficult your property is, right?
Yeah. And then we had another comment. I guess this gentleman, Roman, said he's mad he couldn't attend today. Any replay available? Roman, we answered that question. We do have all of our stuff on at Talk CRE on every social media platform out there. Wherever you're watching that right now on Facebook, it's a replay on there, so you can rewatch it. It's recorded. We really appreciate if you guys appreciate the show. Give us a thumbs up, likes. Dusty, as always, sir. I think we kicked butt today. I know we had a couple little glitches in the beginning, but I look forward to us having our next meeting next week. We're gonna surprise everybody what we're gonna cover then. But as always, Dusty, my co-host, Dusty Bates, commercial real estate.
Great being here. Yeah.
Lawrence King, Dusty, we're out. Thank you, man.